Hello guys, welcome back to the quantity surveying workshop and to another video. In today's video we're going to be continuing with the series for the measurement for a frame structure, and for this section we are going to be starting with our superstructural works. In our previous videos we have been dealing with the substructure, which is everything concerning the foundation, and in our last video we just put an end to that video. So if you've not watched that particular video, please go and check the video out, it will help you a lot. So in this video we are going to be starting how to measure our superstructural works for a framed building. So this is the taking off list that we are going to be working with. So for the first item I'm going to be measuring will be the columns. So I measured it in such a way that we are going to be starting with the carcass, that's the skeleton of the building, the frames, which is the columns. Then we're now going to get to the block work. After the block work, we'll work with the lintels, then the beams and the suspended floor. So as you can see, these are the items that we are going to be measuring for. First item is the columns, and in measuring the columns we are going to measure the in-situ concrete work, the formwork, the reinforcement, which consists of the straight bars and the stirrups. Then after which we are going to measure the block work, which consists of 230 block work and 150 block work. So while measuring the two individual block works, we are going to be carrying out their adjustments for the opponents. So if there's openings around the 230 block work, we are going to adjust for them. Similarly for the 150 block work. So next is the lintels. So for the lintels we have to measure the concrete work, the formwork, the reinforcement, which consists of the straight bar and the stirrups. So next will be the beams. The same thing, you measure the in-situ concrete work, formwork, the reinforcement, which consists of the straight bars and the stirrups. And lastly, we will now measure the suspended floor. At the suspended floor, we have to measure the in-situ concrete work, the formwork, and the reinforcement, which consists of the main bars and the distribution bars. So after measuring all these, we would have successfully measured for the superstructural works for this particular building. So first things first, in this video we are going to be trying to measure two things. So in this video we are going to be starting with the columns, and for the measurement in this video we are going to be treating the in-situ concrete work and the formwork, while in another video we are going to be treating the reinforcements for the columns. So this video will be the in-situ concrete work and formwork for the columns. So one thing about measurement is that most of the times what you've already calculated in your substructural works would be the same thing you'll be bringing to your superstructural works. So you have to keep your documents very, very well to protect you from remeasuring items that you've already measured before. So now, how do we measure for our columns, the in-situ concrete work for our columns? We know that concrete is measured in cubic meters, meaning that we're going to be needing the length, width, and the thickness of the concrete in the columns. So now, before we even get there, where are our columns? So if you look at this drawing, this is the drawing of our foundation drawing, right? And as you can see, the foundation drawing shows the column placements, which are all these thick areas, this black thickness here. These are the column placements, and as you can see, they've already labeled it as column type 2, column type 1, and so on and so forth. So this is the detailed design of the dots you are seeing there, from column type 1 down to column type 6. And as you can see, if you look at this, what we have here is column type 1, column type 2, column type 3, column type 4, column type 5, down to column type 6. And now, if you look at this drawing here, you can see that the column begins from the what? Foundation. If you look at this drawing here, this is the what? Starter column. And you remember that we measured it in our what? Substructural works. So now, to measure for the columns in your superstructural works, most especially the ground floor, it is the same thing that you've already measured in your what? Foundation, that you are going to be measuring in your what? Ground floor. The only difference that will change is the height of the what? Column. Let me take that again. The same placement of columns in your foundation is the same placement of columns in your what? Ground floor. So most of the times, so when they are constructing and they begin to what? Construct the columns in the foundation, right? After they've casted their oversized concrete, those, you can see that there's reinforcement. Let me just be more practical. You can see that this reinforcement, after the oversized concrete, reinforcement came out. So this reinforcement is going to continue. There's going to be a continuation of reinforcement for this column at column type 1. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the same amount of columns in your foundation is the same amount of columns that you are going to be having in your ground floor. I don't know if that makes sense. So basically all the information concerning your columns that you've already written down or brought out when calculating or when you were measuring for the starter columns in the substructural works, you are going to be bringing them back here because you are still going to be seeing them in your ground floor. The only difference now is that the columns are going to be longer because they will be as long as the height of the building. I hope that makes sense. Please, if you don't understand this statement, please state it in the comment section so that I can come over it again. So with that, we can now move further. Now, these are the documents of all the measurements we've done concerning the concrete to the starter columns in the substructure. So as you can see, when we were measuring for the columns in the foundation, you can see we've already brought out all the specifications. Column type 1 in the foundation was 7 in number. Column type 2 in the foundation was 8 in number. Column type 3, which is 230 by 230, was 4 in number. Column type 4, 230 by 230, 3 in number. Column type 5, 300 by 300 is 2 in number. And column type 6, 230 by 381 is 1 in number. So the same quantity and placement of these columns that you have in your foundation is the same quantity and placement of columns that you are going to be having in your ground floor. So just to make things more easy to understand, if you look at this drawing, right, what I did to make things easier was that I tried to use red biro to kind of bring out the column placements that were in the foundation so that you can see it in the ground floor plan. And as you can see, the places I have already demarcated with red biro are where the columns were placed in the foundation. Now, as I did this, I saw that there were some issues with the drawing, as this column here is in between a window, but it's not a serious thing, as this window can be pushed to this side or this side, wherever you want. So we cannot say because of the window we remove the column, because this is structure we're talking about here. So the window has to give way for the structure. So the column remains here while the window was moved to the side. So that is the only correction we're going to be doing in this drawing. But as you can see, I have already brought out the placement of the columns that were in the foundation, and as you can see, I have brought them into the ground floor plan. So the same quantity of columns in your foundation is the same quantity and placement of the columns in your ground floor. So with this, we can now measure. So basically what I've done here is that I've brought out the parameters. As you can see in the column that were in the foundation, I brought out the parameters. So I just brought them back, because what you are going to be seeing in the foundation, which is for the columns, you are also going to be seeing them on the ground floor. So I brought them back, and we're going to be using it to measure. So the first thing is in situ concrete work. So to cater for the in-situ concrete work, we need, like I said before, concrete is measured in meter cube. So we're going to be needing 3 parameters: the length, the width, and the thickness of the concrete. So as you can see, for each of the column types, we have the length and the width from column type 1 down to column type 6. So we're missing one parameter, which is the height of the column. So we need to determine what the height of the column will be. So the first thing we're going to be looking for will be the height of the column. So height of column. So to determine the height of the column, you are going to be going to your drawing. Now, if you look at this drawing, let me zoom in. If you look at this drawing, take a look at column type 1. You can see from this point, here, which is the point of the oversized concrete at the top of the oversized concrete, you can see that there's a dimension from this point down to this point, 3,150. So this 3,150 ends at the top of the suspended floor, also known as the decking. So now, when you are casting for the column, you are not going to cast the column to enter inside the suspended floor. So it is common practice that the column is casted to the bottom of the beam. I don't know if that makes sense. You first cast the column to the bottom of the beam. After casting the column to the bottom of the beam, then you are not going to cast the beam and the suspended floor together. I don't know if that makes sense. So now, how do we now get the height of the column from the top of the oversized concrete down to the bottom of the beam? This is the beam here that you are seeing at this point. This is the beam. And this thickness you are seeing like this is the suspended floor. So we need to determine what is the length of the column from this point down to this point. So what we'll now do is this: since they're giving us that the length from this point to this point is 3,150, all we need to do now is to look for the height of the beam from here to here and then minus it. It will give us the length of the column. So if you look at this drawing, this is the first floor beam details. As you can see here, the first floor beam details. So you can see that this is the section of a beam, right? And what is the height of the beam? The beam is 450 mm thick. The thickness of the beam is 450 mm. So we're going to be minusing that 450 mm from 3,150 to get us the height of the column from this point down to the bottom of the beam. I don't know if that makes sense. So with that, we are now going to measure. So the height of the column, we know that the length given to us here is 3,150. So we'll now bring this back. Length is equal to 3,150. We will now less beam. So the beam is what 450 mm what thick. So when you minus it, you are going to be having what 2700. So it means that the height of the column from the top of the oversized concrete or the German floor down to the bottom of the beam is what 2700. That is the height of the column we are going to be casting. I don't know if that makes sense. So now we can now move further. So with this, we can now begin our measurements, starting with column type 1. So for column type 1, we know that install concrete work is measured in meter cube. So we're going to be needing the length, the width, and the height of the column. So for column type 1, it is 230 by 230. So we'll measure 0.23 by 0.23 by 2.70. So this will give us the volume of column type 1. But how many column type 1 do we have that are we going to be seeing in our ground floor? It will be 7 in number, same as the foundation, because I told you that the columns you see in your foundation will be the same columns that will come out to your ground floor. So we'll now multiply this by 7, and then we'll close. So when you do the math, 0.23 times 0.23 times 2.70 multiplied by 7 is 1.00. I don't know if that makes sense. So now we'll now move to the next one, which is column type 2. So column type 2 will do the same thing. Remember, in the description, column type 1 to 4 are the same specification, 230 by 230. The only difference is in their quantity. Column type 1 is 7 in number, 2 is 8 in number, column type 3 is 4 in number, column type 4 is 3 in number. So the next one, column type 2 was 0.23 by 0.23 by 2.70 by how many in number? 8 in number. And then you now close. So when you multiply everything, you are going to be having 1.14. So you now move towards column type 3. And column type 3, the same thing, 0.23 by 0.23 by 2.70 multiplied by the how many in number? 4 in number. And when you do the math, you are going to be having 0.57. Next in line is column type 4. And I'm going to be having 0.23 by 0.23 by 2.70, and they are how many in number? 3 in number. So multiply by 3, and then you close. So when you do the math, you are going to be having 0.43 cubic meters. So next is column type 5. So column type 5 is where the specification began to change, and as you can see, column type 5, it says that it is 300 by 300. So you now book 0.30 by 0.30 by 2.70 multiplied by how many? They are 2 in number. So when you do the math, you're going to be having 0.4. You're going to be having 0.49. So the last one we're going to be measuring for is column type 6. So for column type 6, the dimension is what? 230 by 381. So we'll now what? Book 0.23 by 0.38 by 2.70, and it is 1 in number, so we'll just leave it that way. So when you do the math, 0.23 by 0.38 by 2.70 is going to be equals to what? 2.35. So doing this, we've measured for what? All our columns in the ground floor, from column type 1 down to column type 6. So what we're going to be doing now is to get the total volume of our what? Columns in the ground floor, or the total volume of concrete for our columns in the ground floor. So we're going to be adding everything we've got in our squaring column. So 1 plus 1.14 plus 0.57 plus 0.43 plus 0.49 plus 2.35 is equal to what? 5.97. So we are going to be having a total of what? 5.97 cubic meter. Then you are now going to what? Describe by saying reinforced in situ concrete work the mixed ratio 1:2:4 in cement, sand and aggregates. Thickness of the aggregate, let's say 16 mm aggregates in ground floor columns. And then you will now what? Close. So doing this, you've measured for the what? The in situ concrete work for your what? Columns in the ground floor. So the next thing now we're going to be looking at will be the formwork to the sides of the what? Columns. So to measure for the formwork to the sides of the columns, it is easy. All you just need to do is to find the area of each sides of the what? Column. So now you can see that if you look at this drawing, you can see that if you see, this is our ground floor here, and as you can see, we have a section at 1, which is section through what? 1. Let me zoom in so that you can see closer. So this is the this is the section through 1, which is this. And as you can see, what we have here is a what? Square. And a square, all faces are what? Equal. So what we're going to be doing now is that we're going to be taking one face, right? So the face, the area we have here will be the same area we have here going round for the 4 faces. So now the formwork is measured in meters square. So we're going to be needing what? The length of one side by the height of the what? Column. So we know that the length of one side is what? 230 mm, and the height of the column, we've calculated the height to be what? 2,700. So it means that the area for one side will be what? 230 mm by what? 2,700 mm. So that will be the area for one face. Then you multiply it by what? 4 faces, which is for 1, 2, 3, 4. So that 4 faces will be the what? Area of the column. Will be the area of the what? Formwork for one column. But remember that each of the column types have different quantity. So you are not going to multiply it by their what? Quantity. I hope that makes sense. So with that, we will now start with column type 1. So for column type 1, we'll first measure we'll first measure one face. So we know that the dimension for column type 1 is 230 by 230. So for the first face, we'll have 0.23, which is the length here, this side, multiplied by the what height of the what column, which we've calculated as what 2700 in the beginning. So by what 2.70, this will be the area of one face. You multiply it by what 4 faces, because it is what a square, and all 4 sides must be what the same. So multiplied by the what number of column type 1 we have, and as you can see, they said it is what 7 in number, so multiplied by what 7. So doing this, we've measured for what column type 1. So when you do the math, 0.23 times 2.70 times 4 times 7 will give you what 17.39 square meters. So 17.39 square meters is the total area of formwork that you are going to be needing for all the 7 column type, for all the 4 faces of the 7 column type 1s you have in your what drawing. So we'll now do the same thing for column type 2. So for column type 2, remember column type 1 to 4 have the same dimension, 0.23 by what 0.23. So it means that the formwork we use in column type 1 will be the same formwork we use down to column type what 4. So we'll now write 0.23 by 2.70 multiplied by what 4 faces multiplied by what the number of column type 2 we have, and that is what 8 in number. And then you close. So when you do the math, you are going to be having 19.87 square meters. So we'll now do what column type what 3. So it has the same specification, so it will be 0.23 by what 2.70 multiplied by what 4 faces multiplied by what the quantity of column type 3 we have, and that's 4 in number. So multiplied by what 4, and we're going to be having what 9.94, and then you what close. So next on the list will be what column type 4, which still has the same specification of 0.23 by 0.23. So it will be 0.23 by 2.70 multiplied by what 4 sides multiplied by what the number of column type 4 we have is what 3 in number. So multiplied by what 3, and then you close. So when you do the math, you are going to be having what 7.45. So next on the list is what column type 5. Now column type 5 has a different specification from column type 1 to 4, and as you can see, it is what 300 by what 300. So if you look at this drawing, you can see this is column type 5 here. This is column type 5 here. So as you can see, it is what 300 by what 300. So like I said before, formwork is measured in meters squared. So we're going to be needing the area of one face. So we're going to be needing this length by the height of the column, which is calculated as what 2700. So with this, we can now what book. So column type 5 will be what 0.30 by 2.70 multiplied by what 4 in number, because it is a square, multiplied by what the number of column type 5 we have, and it is what 2 in number, and then you close. So when you do the math, you are going to be having what 6.48 square meters. And then lastly would be what column type what 6. So now column type 6 is different, it's quite different from column type 1 to 5, because it is no longer a square. it is now what? A rectangle. So now if you look at this drawing, you can see that this is the section, and as you can see, one side is 230, one side is 381, and you know that in your geometry for a rectangle, the opposing sides are what? Equal. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be finding the formwork for one side and multiply it by 2, and we'll now do the same thing for the other side, multiply it by what? 2, to get the total area of the formwork for this what? Column. So now we're now going to be what? Measuring. So for the first side, which is the shorter side of what? 230 by what? 230, which is the shorter side of what? 230 millimeters, we're going to be writing it 0.23, which is the length by what? The height of the column, which we calculated as what? 2.70. So we're going to be multiplying it by what? 2 sides, and then we'll multiply it by the quantity. Column type 6 is how many in number? It is 1 in number, so we can leave it that way, 1 in number, and then we'll now what? Close. So this is for the what? Shorter side, the 2 faces, this face and this face. So we need to do for the longer side, this face and this face. So the longer side, the dimension is what? 381, which is 0.38 by what? 2.70 multiplied by what? 2 faces, and then we'll now what? Close. So for the first side, when you do the math, you're going to be having what? 1.24. And for the second side, when you do the math, 0.38 by 2.70 multiplied by 2, we're going to be having what? 2.05 square meters. So we're going to be adding all the parameters together: 17.39 plus 19.87 plus 9.94 plus 7.45 plus 6.48 plus 1.24 plus 1.24 plus 2.05, and we're going to be having 62.42 square meters. So this is the total area of formwork we're going to be needing to cast all our columns in the ground floor. So we're now going to describe by saying plain formwork to the sides of columns in the ground floor. And then we'll close. So doing this, we've measured for the formwork to our columns. So with this, we've come to the end of today's video, guys. I hope you derived adequate knowledge from this video. Please, if you did, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel, because it helps the channel grow. Thank you, and we'll see you in our next video. In our next video, we're going to be treating the reinforcement inside the column in our ground floor. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you, and we'll see you.